research project that we formulated at the Surcolombiana University, and it is titled Being and Becoming English Language Teachers, Narrative from Reservist English Language Teachers, and it is part of let's say, a bigger study, but today we are going to present only the part related to English language teachers and pre-service teachers in this field. So we are Eliana Alarcón Camacho and Jairo Castañeda Trujillo, and we belong to Surcolombiana University. So we are going to continue with the next part.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Eliana Alarcón, and Jairo, you forgot to mention something really important, that we are a part of the research group ILSearch. And that is, well, it was just a quick ad. I'm going to start telling or presenting this presentation, sorry. It's going to be divided mainly into parts. In the first part, we are going to talk about the context. We are going to describe the research problem, the research question, and the objectives. And in the second part, we are going to focus on the methodology, the results, and the conclusions of this study. So I'm going to start telling you a little bit about the context in which we conduct this study. So the first picture that you see on the screen is the main entrance of Universidad Surcolombiana, which is the public university. It's a public university located in the south of the country, to be more specific, in Neiva, a very warm but nice city. And in the second picture, you have a group of students, and they belong to the language teacher education program. That program is part, or it's one of the 8 programs that we have at Universidad Surcolombiana, and they are part of the School of Education. The language teacher education program has more than 25 years old, and many of the teachers who work at schools here in Neiva, in Huila, in some places in Colombia, and even in some other countries are alumni of our program. What else can I tell you? Our program lasts like 9 semesters, and students are required to take courses, not only the ones that are part of the School of Education, but also those who are more specific from the teacher program, from the teacher education program. And they include English courses, but also pedagogy and didactic courses that they take through those 9 semesters that they spent at the university. And the data that we analyzed, or the data that we got for this study, was collected in the context of a class where actually like 2 courses. One is the teaching practicum that the students take in the last 2 semesters. I mean, the 2 ones that they take as courses, and also a course that is called reflective teaching. So with that context in mind, I'm going to describe what is the research problem that we are exploring, or that we explore in this study. So our School of Education, Professor Jairo, the slide, our School of Education has established some elements that are part of the teacher education that pre-service teachers get at the programs that are part of the faculty. And that is like the perspective or the education that they have. So students need to get some pedagogical, investigative, cultural, social, and humanistic elements. And because of the location of our city, Neiva somehow was affected by the social conflict that we have had, and now we have in the last 50 years. They also require teachers to have a culture of peace. Yeah, they want them to have an integral education, and that is the main perspective that they have. They are also required, or they need to be able to teach at different levels. Yeah. Of the educational system in our country, like preschool, basic, and media levels. Yeah, they need to do that. So all those elements and all those requirements constitute a big challenge, not only for the program, yeah, for the teaching education program, but also for the students, because they need to assume, or they need to be able to manage all those aspects while they complete their degree. So there we have the first gap, yeah, in that we want to fill with this study. It's how pre-service teachers assume the different perspectives that the School of Education has for their education, and how in turn they project themselves as future teachers. We also have, or on the other hand, well, but not connected better, that those standards that the School of Education, or those requirements that are set by the School of Education, are also in alignment with public policies given by the Ministry of Education. And those policies are usually connected with the quality of the programs and with the specific features that the programs need to have. And those qualities at the same time are connected to international policies that usually, or well, most of the time, they tend to standardize processes, and in this case, educational processes. So here we have like, well, not the second gap, but also another gap that is being filled with this study. And it's how this phenomenon of alignment between the School of Education, Ministry of Education, and international policies affects the professional and personal development of future graduates or future teachers. So in order to explore those issues, we propose two research questions that Professor Jairo is going to describe.
The two research questions that we proposed on this research is, what do the narratives of the pre-service English language teachers reveal about the construction of their teaching being? And the second one has to do with, how do those constructions contribute to the understanding of the English language teaching program at Universidad Surcolombiana? In order to answer these questions, we propose also three objectives, which are the first one, identify the pre-service English language teachers' references of being and becoming a teacher constructed during their passage through the degree. The second one is to describe the resignifications that the pre-service English language teachers give to their being and become a teacher within the particular context. And the last one has to do with the programs make visible the contribution that this undergraduate program of the Faculty of Education gave to the development of the pre-service English language teachers in this specific university. In order to collect this information, we found our research on some theoretical foundations.
Professor Eliana, I think that your microphone is off.
Yes, sorry. So yeah, as Professor Jairo was saying, in order to answer the research question and to achieve those objectives, we frame our study between three main constructs. The first one, initial teacher education, language teacher identity, and narrative inquiry. So the first one, initial teacher education, I'm going to start with something or with how the Ministry of Education sees and perceives this. It says that is the one that promotes spaces for the pre-service teachers to learn the basic knowledge and to develop the basic competences that they need to become professional teachers. Yeah, they also claim that teacher education is the moment to be in touch with realities, yeah, with the realities of being a teacher. But at the same time, they also mention that that teacher education is aimed at learning to teach. So historically, that learning to teach or learning how to be a teacher was seen as something or as a physical project, so a more cognitive. So you need to learn specific methods, specific theories, and those elements were isolated from the reality, from social context. So there was a notion that knowledge could be transmitted to teachers by other teachers. And those theories, those methods were assumed to be applicable to all the contexts or to every single context. But fortunately, there is like a different perspective, or more social perspective, that claims that becoming a teacher is a more complex process. And that element of formal professional education, so the disciplinary knowledge, only constitutes a small part of teacher education. And what is important, not what is important, but we need also to consider that teachers or student teachers come to teacher education with previous experiences, and they have previous knowledge, and that previous knowledge is what shape the way or what teachers learn or what they are going to learn through teacher education. So that is why teacher education needs to recognize all the previous schooling experiences and all that knowledge that teachers or student teachers have, because they shape what teachers are going to learn, the things that they are going to do in the classroom, the things that they can do, the things that they will or won't do. So that is essential. And this is also connected to our next construct, which is teacher identity. And it's because studying who teachers are and how they develop their identities is important, not only to understand the nature of the learning, that teachers have in teacher education, but also to transform teacher education. So in regard or regarding teachers' identity, Norton claims that it's a process in which a person understands the relationship that the person, that he is or her, has with the world, and how that that relationship is structured across space and time, and how that reflection, how that relationship also is going to project the things in the future. And because teacher identity is still like something difficult to or remains difficult to grasp or to give as a unique concept, Barthuizen tried to summarize the main elements of teacher identity based on reflections from different scholars. And he got like the main features of teacher's identity. First, that is dynamic and that is changing all the time. Another is that is related to the identity inside of us and the identities outside of us. So our interaction with people, so our students, our peers, members of the community, school administrators, with objects, in this case, it could be the curriculum, materials, and with places, so the different settings in which we are immersed. He also claims that it's not singular, that we don't have just one single identity, that we have different identities that are sometimes in conflict, and they are conflicted and contested by ourselves, but they also may be in conflict with how others see us. But sometimes, or not all the time, is a conflict. Sometimes there is harmony between those identities. And that happens when we are recognized by others, when or the things that we do and the things that we consider we are doing in a good way are acknowledged by other people. So there are also, or he summarizes main of or some of the external influences that may affect the development of identities. One is the way in which the teaching profession is perceived by others. And also, he talks about the different scales of context in which we operate. So those scales are Ministry of Education. We are like in the middle, or the teacher is in the middle, and we have the Ministry of Education assessment. We have the curriculum, we have other teachers, we have schools, yeah, all those elements that constitute being a teacher. And sometimes they can like affect, yeah, they can constrain the development of the identity. But in some situations, we have agency in those specific elements, in those specific situations. But in order to bring about change, we need to reflect and to know who we are, to know how we are fit in those elements. Yeah, what is our place between those elements that constitute being a teacher? And that's why teachers or language teachers' identity is becoming like more common in research. And the most common way of conducting research in language teacher identity is with narrative inquiry, which is going to be described by Professor Jairo.
Yeah, narrative inquiry is specifically what Eliana was mentioning, this way in which many people can start portraying their experiences, showing what they have lived, and while they are doing it, they can analyze and they can understand how they can construct or they have constructed certain kind of identity. So the life experiences and the stories that they build up are very, very important sources of information and sources also of like a way to be aware of certain kind of things related to language teacher identity. According to Clandinin, these kind of stories make us as we are, because we are constituted by stories. So every single time, every single day, we tell stories, we say something about one thing, something about the other. So we are constructing stories many, every single time. So we construct stories about the past, we construct stories about the present, and even we construct stories about the future. So these imaginaries and these kind of identities or aspects of identities start emerge. So also, according to Pollinghorn, we can see that these stories are very similar to a narration and as any other narration, and it has some elements that we have to take into account, elements like time, like space, like the characters, elements that constitute the experience and that can allow us to understand how they enter in that conflict that Eliana was mentioning, or solve those conflicts that they are having, or they are starting constituted or looking for ways in order to advance to a certain extent to get a certain goal that is called the agency, or even the investment that they do in order to get those goals. So this is the idea of the narrative inquiry, and we strongly believe that we are made of stories and we can construct and reconstruct the stories and try to understand ourselves. And with this research, the main intention was not just to understand what the others were the others were living, but also to make them understand themselves, to make them be aware of what they could do or what they are right now. So in this sense, the methodology that we decided to follow was narrative research, and we started collecting information with 4 different pre-service teachers from Universidad Surcolombiana. They studied at the language program, and they are in the last semester. So they have already covered all the credits, and they were like leaving the last teaching practicum and taking the last course that is reflective teaching in our university. So we decided to use something that Barhuisen called the narrative frames in order to help them to construct those stories about their own trajectory in the program. And we did those stories, we used 3 different frames, one from the past, one from the present, and another one that is related to the future. We reconstruct those stories just in one, and we try to analyze and interpret what they were doing and how they live the experience of becoming an English language teacher. And also we use some interviews in order to just verify some information that we collected through the narrations. But anyhow, the most important instrument in this case was the narrative itself, and we started working with that. So once we analyze the narratives and we like construct contrast them among each other, so we could find some aspects or some important issues that have happened during their trajectories. The first one is a moment in the past that there is an initial conceptualization of being an English teacher. The second one has to do with the resignification of that initial conceptualization or concept of an English teacher. And the last one is a contribution or some contributions that the ELT program can give to the conceptualization of being an English teacher. So remember that our focus here is how we understand and how they understood the being or the becoming of an English language teacher. So taking the first one as a reference here, initial conceptualization of being an English language teacher, we could understand, we could see from their narratives and from their stories that at the beginning they thought that being a teacher, it was just a profession in which you transmit knowledge. So you stand up in front of many people and you just give the knowledge that they were asking, or just giving the rules according, well, we are teaching a language, so we are giving rules, grammar rules, or we are giving vocabulary, or we are giving a certain kind of skills. So it is like a transmission, right? Just transmitting the content. But then they also admitted that one of the reasons why they started in this major was because they wanted to learn English. They were very focused on the language. They were very interested in learning the language, but they were not interested in teaching. They didn't care even about teaching. So they said, okay, I'm going to learn the language, I'm going to learn English, and maybe I'm going to do any other thing. And that other thing could be knowing the word. So going around the world, knowing the word, getting in contact with people who speak English, getting in contact with people who belong to other culture, different cultures, not native speakers, but people who speak English and could communicate easily in this language. And also, in some cases, they could see themselves as not as teachers, but as maybe interpreters or translators, or maybe working in another kind of job using the English they have learned. But the teaching was put in aside. So I have here some quotes from our students, some parts of these stories that they wrote, and we could see, or we can see, some of the elements that I have already explained. For example, in the first one, this first participant talks about the possibility of just communicating with any person in the world. So that was what like the idea that this person had at the beginning of the BA, just to get a very good fluency, very good language level, and then start communicating. And that happens also with the second participant. In this case, she says, nunca quise ser profesora, pero sí me gustaba mucho el inglés. Así que decidí estudiar eso. So it was the language, but not the part of the teaching, what she took into consideration to enter to the program. So she focused only on the part of language again. And the last one, this person says, para mí ser docente no era lo que tenía en mente. So this idea of being a teacher is not what many students who start the MBA have in mind, because they think that this profession sometimes is not that well-recognized profession. It is not the one in which you can get a lot of money, or it is not the one in which you can do many things that you could do with other kind of professions. But anyhow, they really enjoy the language. As the last participant says, mi gusto por el idioma was the one that helped or make him, in this case, to take this, to make the decision of entering into the program. So it is good, and it was a very good beginning, because but the idea of teaching was not present. However, while the time passed, they started seeing that being a teacher was not that not that just that profession in which you transmit knowledge. They started being more conscious about the role, the integral role that a teacher has, and the important role that a teacher has. So they started connecting the teaching not only with the instrumental part, but also with a critical conception. They start seeing issues in the society in which they say, okay, I am going to help, I'm going to contribute from my own experience and in my class, or from my class, from my English class. So I would like to do this, I would like to do that. So they start seeing many other options in order to in order to work with the students they have or they could have in the future. So this idea was deconstructed and they start constructed another kind of identity or idea regarding to what a teacher was. And in this trajectory, and in this transition construction of this conception of what a teacher is, they started also becoming more committed with the teaching profession. We could see that at the beginning, many of our service teachers said that they didn't want to be a teacher, they didn't like to be a teacher, and they didn't care even to be teachers. But in this case, we could see that they started seeing the teaching profession as something that they wanted to pursue, that they wanted to continue doing. And they showed that throughout their experiences. And also, there is a consolidation of the identity as English language teachers. So in this case, when they started seeing themselves as teachers, seeing themselves as protagonists of a social act and protagonists also of a social moment in which they can also influence on others, they could see themselves as English teachers. So they identify, or they could identify by the end of the major as English teachers. So we can see these in these examples, some of the examples from the narratives, and we can see how they started seeing things or seeing many issues regarding to, for example, community-based pedagogy, in which they could understand that working with the community is very important, not only just in the classroom, but working with the community. And in the second case, we can see how the transformation of this initial idea that teaching the verb to be was the only thing that you have to do, evaluating the verb to be, and that's it, and establish the level of the students. And this person, yes, he says, más allá de darles conocimiento a los estudiantes, la labor docente debe estar llena de habilidades humanas y morales. Con esto me refiero a despertar la parte humana solidaria de la persona. So you can see here that they are not focusing in the instrumentalist aspect only, but they go a little beyond. They started seeing the society or the teaching profession as something that could be transformative. In the last case, they said, pensaba que, por ejemplo, enseñar algo era solamente el hecho de tener conocimiento sobre algo y vaya, aparece allá al frente y enseñe y ya. However, the transformation was evident in the last part. Ser profesor es un hecho, empezamos, de valores, de gran valor, porque uno no solamente es un profesor, sino que cuando es el momento en que uno entra a un salón, uno ya se convierte en un psicólogo, ya se convierte en mediador, y en un amigo, y en una guía. So you can see here that the identity started being like fluid and start showing different kind of identities just by recognizing themselves as English language teachers. But this all can have, or we can get this throughout the language teaching program as well. So there are some contributions that can can help to preserve English language teachers to reconstruct this idea of what a teacher is.
Well, thank you, Jairo. So, well, from the narratives and from the histories that we got from our pre-service teachers, we also identified some of the contributions that the program had on the conceptualization of being an English teacher. And the first element that is part of that contribution is that the teacher educator as a role model. So most of the participants, I think was all of them, describe how positive learning experiences influence them to want to be teachers and also to become in the kind of teachers that they had during the teacher education program. They identify factors like committed teachers, caring teachers, and all those positive learning environments that they have. So they see the teachers, educators that they have as role models. So those memories of instructions that they got through their apprenticeship of observation, in this case during teacher education, function as a factor that is guiding, these pre-service teachers as they approach to the things that they are going to do in the classroom, or probably the things that they are doing. We didn't explore their actual teacher practices, their actual classroom practices, so we don't know. But we don't know what they are doing right now. But research actually supports that these kinds of models, these kinds of behaviors that they could see from this apprenticeship of observation tend to be replicated when they are working in their classroom. So in this case, it's good because they have positive experience and they see like a good role model. So likely, or it's expected that their students are going to have like the same positive experiences as well. Another element that was mentioned in every single narrative and history was the teaching practicum. They all describe a very positive experience from the teaching practicum. They see that as a setting for shaping their identity. And remember that we talk about the teaching practicum, not just those 2 last semesters in which they go and teach in their schools for 10 or 6 hours. We see the teaching practicum as every single encounter that they had with educational settings. So when they were doing research and all the other moments that I mentioned. So those experiences that they had in those encounters help them to define what being a teacher is, the elements that Professor Jairo mentioned before. And they function as a trigger for rethinking themselves and to consolidate the identity that they are developing. Yeah. And one more element that we consider is a contribution is reflection as a way of rethinking teaching. Of course, to be able to shape that identity that is in progress, that is in construction, they have gone through different moments of reflection, and those moments of reflection or the context of those reflections have been some courses that they have taken. They mention courses like reflective teaching, of course, the one that they are taking now at the same time with the practicum. The 2 research courses that they take. They also mention courses like course design and other courses that give them the opportunity to reflect on who they are, to reflect on the things that they are doing. So those elements really help them to see and to face the real problems that they may or that they are encountering with the one that they are taking at the same time with the practicum that they are encountering in their settings. So those are the main contributions that we found that the program is given to the construction and the conceptualization of what being an English teacher means. We also have some examples samples from the the data that we got here in the first one, on the left, we had siempre tenido, he sentido, perdón, que el programa tiene muy buenos profesores, yeah, and then the person like questioned, do I want to take them as the role models? And they said, entonces es como que tú estás tomando la parte académica, pero también sientes el deseo de decir, wow, me gusta su metodología, me gusta cómo se llevan a cabo las clases, me gustaría hacer de esa forma. So we can see that probably, and it's likely that this learner, this teacher, pre-service teacher, maybe will like incorporate some of the behaviors that she experienced as part of those positive experiences. Here, we have some others. This next one is regarding the teaching practicum. Inicialmente me sentía muy inseguro. This is the case of a student who was talking about like his personality and some of the features that he had, that he was kind of shy and he was not like very confident about being able to stand in front of a group, to guide a group and to lead them. So he was like very shy and he was like kind of insecure, but then he overcame those elements, yeah? So esta es de manera que la parte más difícil me resultaba era la parte práctica. Sin embargo, empecé a tener más confianza y me sentía más cómodo y luego de superar esos miedos. So he, again, we could see and he acknowledged and he recognized the way in which he changed the way he was and now what the things that he is able to do. And the other one is also the one here on the right, is also about the teaching practicum, about how important the teaching practicum is or was for this student. Lo más importante que debo resaltar es el hecho que estar expuesto a un aula de clases con estudiantes genuinos, and he also talks about reflection. Creo que este simple hecho ha sido bastante enriquecedor y he tratado de aprovechar al máximo cada oportunidad que tengo para extraer información o reflexionar sobre situaciones similares y mi reacción para con estas. And then we see the last one, also the reflection opportunity that the students had with the specific courses. Here we have the reflective teaching, the research courses that they take, and of course the practical. So those were like the main elements that we found when we analyzed the data. Now we are going to go over the main conclusions that we have so far.
Yeah, so one of the main conclusions that we have here is how pre-service teachers' experiences constitute themselves as a source for resignifying their beliefs and construct their teacher identities. So these experiences are very valuable. Sometimes we take for granted that they just go to the teaching program and just leave what they have to leave and that's it. But we can also acknowledge that the effort that they make, that they put on the becoming, on the process of becoming, it's very significant. And the significance of this is throughout, we can find the significance of this throughout these experiences. So we have to recognize that the pre-service teachers, or the pre-service English teachers in this case, can be a very good source of information. Let's say we have, I don't want to objectify them, but they can provide a lot of knowledge in regards of the teaching language teaching program, right? So we can notice how they contribute to this idea of improvement or getting better a little bit the language teaching program processes. And in the same line, we could see that the teaching practicum, the scenario of the teaching practicum, understood not only as the 10 hours that they spend during 2 semesters, but all the little practices or all the little moments that they go and experience what the reality is in a language classroom, has a notable influence on the development of their identity. So we have to start working on this idea of the teaching practicum, maybe promoting a little bit. We know and we are aware that the government regulated that the teaching practicum nowadays in the BA programs have to be even, let's say, have a bigger amount of credits. But sometimes we use those credits just to continue giving content, but doesn't allowing or don't allowing them to get these teaching practical experiences that that are very crucial in their identity constitution.
Well, two more elements that we concluded from the data that we got. We see the big influence that the teacher educators have on the development and the construction of identity on pre-service teachers. So we need to be able, or we need to understand the big responsibility that we have. So we need to reflect as well. And we need to evaluate constantly how we are assuming language teaching education. We need to consider if we are giving a space or if we are providing enough spaces for the pre-service teachers or the student teachers to reflect on the things that they are, if we are considering the experiences that they had, the schooling experiences that they have when they came into the program, the previous knowledge that they have. So we need to see, like, because of that role that we are playing, because they are taking teacher educators as role models. So we need to see and need to evaluate, like, okay, what kinds of things am I doing to promote that role? Yeah, so it's going to be like a good role model. Do I have to, or do we have to try to create those positive experiences, or am I creating maybe something negative that that the students may take later in their work or in their classroom when they go to work? And also connected with teaching education as well, or with our site, it's that the programs need to include elements to help students to understand the implications of what being a teacher is since the very beginning, because we could see like the resignification that they had. At the beginning, they didn't want to be English teachers. And it was later or through the course or through the development of the program that they understand and they start to realize, okay, oh, this is the meaning of being a teacher. Oh, these are the things that I need to consider. So I think that we consider that we need to include elements since the moment they start, because it's like after a year probably that they start university, that they start to make sense of the courses that they take, and they start to realize all the implications of being a teacher. So those were the main elements. Of course, there are many other things, and if you want to give us some comments, of course, you are more than welcome to do it. But these are the elements that we have concluded so far. We have the references.
The references.
Well. Yeah, and our contact information. So
thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate your company in this session. Yes, and your time. I could see that there are many former students and current students. So thank you very much for your support.
Thank you so much, Professor Jairo, Professor Eliana, for that thought-provoking presentation. We would like to have some minutes to make comments and questions from the audience. So maybe to make it a little bit more fluent, because we have a lot of people and I assume that most of them want to make comments or questions, we would like to have them on the chat. And those of you who would like to take the floor and address the presenters directly, we encourage you to do so. So any comments or questions from the audience? Okay, from the comment section, most of the people say thank you. Very pertinent presentation, says Jonathan Vasquez. Great from Ana Milena Morales. I don't know if any person in the audience would like to mention anything, would like to talk. They are shy. Okay, you have leave them speechless.
We have here Professor Álvaro Quintero as well. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Adriana Bendek. Thank you very much.
Most of the comments are expecting you to, or are looking forward to your publications. And there is a question from Daniel Francisco. who says, were any narratives which approach the anti-models and their influence in the resignification of what being a teacher is? Were there any narratives which approached the anti-models and their influence in the resignification of what being a teacher is? That is his question. And Professor Enzo would like to mention something. So first we would answer the question, and then we would leave the floor for Professor Enzo.
So Jairo, I don't know if you want to answer.
I would like to ask Daniel, what do you mean with these anti-models?
I think it's like the negative things that they mention, probably. I don't know if I'm right.
Yeah, I understand it like that.
Yeah,
So
me too.
if I negative experiences with teachers, yeah, there are many negative experiences with teachers that also constitute their own teaching identity. And actually, what we express here, teachers as models, let's say that we can divide it into two sides, as Eliana was mentioning in the implications and conclusions. Maybe we can have these attitudes towards students that are good influence in the sense that they can become like teachers, a more reflective teacher or a more aware teacher about the culture, the context, and everything. But as well, there are other experiences that are like these ones, like negatives, but negative in the sense that they didn't like because the teacher was like too structured, or that the teacher was like too like, let's say, was not conscious about who they are, because our context in NEVA, the pre-service teachers are not just people who live in the city. They live in many, or they come from many other places, rural areas, small schools, small towns. So we have to consider also about those elements. And there are some language teacher educators who don't take into consideration that, and they see only the teaching of the language in this case as something that has to be given as it is, but don't take into account different contexts, different uh, identities that they are showing and portraying. And yes, definitely there are some negative experiences that maybe we have to highlight a little bit more.
Yes, I would like also to add something, and it's that they didn't mention specific behaviors. Yeah, they didn't describe that. They talk about courses. I remember seeing in the data they talk about specific courses that they consider were like too much theory. So probably it was maybe not the course, but the way in which the course was approached. Yeah. Yeah, and maybe it was, or the focus of that course was like that disciplinary knowledge, and the perspective that the teacher had at that moment of the course was that like the old tradition, more isolated. So that's why they were talking about those courses, but not about the specific teachers. And but we could probably say that they could be like the negative part. But remember, Professor Jairo, that we were talking about, and I was like, when reading all the narratives, surprised to see how the practicum, every single comment about the practicum was positive. So that part was like really rewarding to see. So
Yeah.
everything was positive about the practicum.
And that was the part that we wanted to highlight, because it is very like crucial for their identity construction.
Yes.
Thank you, Professor Jairo, Professor Eliana. Thank you, Daniel, for the question. We have a comment from Professor Enzo.
Yeah.
Professor Enzo, would you like to comment?
Hello?
Hello, we can listen to you, Professor.
He's my student, actually.
Thank you so much. Yes. So, well, in this case, I would like to say that I feel fully identified with the whole presentation because, well, it's something that happened to me actually when I started this career. I never thought anything like, yes, I'm going to teach. I just said that I would like to learn English because, well, I find it interesting, useful, but I never thought about that being actually a teacher. However, I feel that when you get into this kind of careers and you go through these courses, like for example, course design, developing material, I think and I feel that if you want to be a teacher, even if you don't know before, this is the courses where you develop this willing to teach. I mean, it's not like the first time you never thought to teach. However, this is something that was inside me, I guess, and you develop this wish to teach through the courses, through the whole experience in the undergraduate program. So I think if you are about to finish any career related to teaching English, is because from the very deep of your side of yourself and in your inside, you wanted actually to teach. So it's something that you didn't know, like for sure, but it's something that you develop. So I guess from the students of, for example, our classmates in this moment that we are about to finish the career, we actually found that we want to teach. So this is something that, as you mentioned in the presentation, these changes in the reflection that we do in ourselves when we do the practicum and all this kind of stuff. So, well, I just want to say that I feel just fully identified with all of this. And now that I'm about to finish, now I know that I want to teach.
Okay, thank you, Enzo, for your comment. It is very valuable, actually. Okay, so I think that we have to.
Thank you, Enzo. Thank you, professors. I don't know if the audience has any other comment or question. Anyway, if you would like to address our speakers, remember that the application Wulva would let you pose the different questions that you have for our speakers. So in case that you don't feel like writing them on the chat in here, you can leave a comment or leave a message in the application. So, okay, Professor Alera has another question. Thanks, Jairo and Eliana, for your talk. A question. You started your presentation with some background about these courses that shape teaching education. What references did you find in the narratives of pre-service teachers?
Professor Jairo.
I am reading the question, sorry. So you started with the presentation with some background about the teaching discourses that shape teaching education. Yeah, definitely we started seeing and we started discussing something related to the public policies and bilingual policies and the those like context or backgrounds that have to do with the like constitution or construction of identity of English language teachers. And yeah, we definitely find some of them. However, we are in that part, in the analysis, we are still in that part because we have collected a little more information because we found that there are like this gap. However, let's say that initially what we have noticed is that they first, and that's something that it is very important to say, they don't understand the public policies. And sometimes they don't know what the public policies require from them as teachers or demand from them as teachers. So there is like a gap in here. Another thing that we have to start developing or try to work a little more because the program to a certain extent doesn't allow the student to understand that. Although the program follows the rules or follows like the regulations of the Ministry of Education and all the public policies related to bilingualism, there is a very huge gap in this regard, right? So we have to continue working on these references about this background that we were mentioning. So thank you for your question and your comment.
Yeah, and I have just one more comment, a short one regarding to that the specific question. And it's when I was talking about teacher education, as you are saying, like the way in which it was seen before, yeah, that it was more like disciplinary knowledge that could be transmitted. And we could see that in the perception and in the way pre-service teachers see teaching at the beginning of the program. Remember that they were saying that it was or being a teacher was, or well, I forgot if we mentioned that, but in the narrative they mentioned that being a teacher was easy, And it was just a matter of transmitting information and teaching the verb to be. Well, that was presented there. So it was, again, that notion that the knowledge is just, can be just transmitted, and that's it. So that was another like link or another element that could be identified in the narratives as well.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Alejandro.
Well,
Okay, Jose.
Okay.
I think that we are done.
Yeah,
Yes.
we already ran out of time. So we thank you once again, Professor Jairo, Professor Eliana, for that very nice presentation. We would like to invite our audience to evaluate this presentation by the form that my co-host Cristina Leon has left in the chat. And we would like to invite you to continue enjoying the Congress. Now we have ASOCOPI Fest. You will be able to address or get into the different sessions for our ASOCOPI Fest through WUWA. And we would like to invite you to come back to the next Concorrect session at 4:50. So thank you so much, all of you, for attending here. And we really appreciate your commitment to the field and the development of the field of ELT in Colombia. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Professor Jairo, Professor Eliana. And well, hope all of you continue enjoying.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
See you very soon. Oh, thank you, Ryan, for the...
Great job, Jairo. Eliana, great job.
Hello, Brian. Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hi,
Good.
bye.
Maria Fernanda. Hello.
Nafi, you are here.
Of course I am.
Yeah, I know that you were going to be here.
I'm looking for stupid dad jokes right now.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
I have found
everybody.
some. I have found some. I'm going to share with you some of the jokes, stupid jokes, to reactivate that group.
Very good. Very good. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great job, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.